This lesson is on scientific and standard notation. We have two rules to follow. So rule number one, we look for decimal. If there is no decimal, then we start in the back. If there is a decimal, then we start at the decimal. One more time. Rule one says, look for the decimal. If there is no decimal, we start at the back. If there is a decimal, then we start at the decimal. So that's rule one. Rule two says, in scientific notation, the leading number or first number is from 1 to 9. The first number cannot be 0 nor bigger than 9. So one more time, scientific notation, the first number is either from 1 to 9. The first number cannot be 0 nor bigger than 9. Okay, so let's use these two rules to do the examples. Okay, so here for scientific notations, as you can see, the first example, there is no decimal, so we start in the back. Again, follow the rule number one. It says look for the decimal. If there is no decimal, start at the back. So in this situation, there is no decimal, so we start in the back. And then we're going to move to the left side. And the reason why we move to the left side is we need the first number to be from 1 to 9. Just like rule number 2 says, the first number is from 1 to 9. So move the decimal to the left. And I cannot stop here because 88 is still bigger than 9. So we need to move one more time, which is between the two 8. So now it is 8.85. So the first number right here is not 0 nor bigger than 9. So again, scientific, first number is between 1 to 9. Okay, and it cannot be 0 and cannot be bigger than 9. So as you can see here, the decimal is moved twice so that the first number is not 0 nor it is bigger than 9. So it is between 1 and 9. Okay, so it is 8.85 times, even though this is the letter X, but here in this situation it represents time. 10 and 10, this is by default, and Y2 because I move 2 times. So I move 1, 2, so that's where the 2 comes from. Next, on the side note, if you go from big number to small number, the power is positive. Okay, so if you go from big number to a small number, the power is positive. So 885 move down to 8.85, so the power is positive. Okay, the next example, same thing. Make sure you follow rule number 1 and also rule number 2 as well. So rule number 1 says look for the decimal. So we do have a decimal, and based on our rule, if there is a decimal, we start at the decimal. So here's our decimal. So we do have a decimal, so this is where we start. Now move to the right side because we don't want the first number to be 0. So we move one time, but since we move one time, the first number is still 0. So we move one more time again, and it is behind this 8. So this decimal is behind the 8, and this 8 is not bigger than 9, so we are okay with rule number 2. Okay, so again, first number is from 1 to 9. It cannot be 0 nor bigger than 9. Okay, so therefore the decimal stops behind the 8. So our answer is 8.1 times 10. Again, this is by default, and we move 2 times, so there's my 2. However, where's the negative came from? We went from small number to big number, so therefore our power is negative. Okay, so I wrote again right here to remind us that scientific notation, the first number has to be from 1 to 9. Okay, so again, this first number right here cannot be 0 and cannot be bigger than 9. It has to be from 1 to 9. Okay, so just to review one more time, if we go from big number to small number, the power is positive. If we move from small number to a big number, the power is negative. Okay, so this is the example for scientific notations. Okay, now on this side we have standard notation. So standard notation is a little bit easier. Okay, so here is our example. Same thing again. We look for the decimal. If there is no decimal, we start in the back. If there is a decimal, we start at the decimal. So in our example, we do have a decimal. So this is where we start. And this is positive 3. Since this is positive 3, we move 3 to the right side. So 1, 2, 3. And the empty space, put the 0 in. Okay, so that is the example for standard notation when we move to the right side. Okay, and the reason why we move to right, because this is positive 3. Okay, next example, same thing again. Follow rule number 1. Again, rule number 1 says if there is no decimal, start from the back. If there is a decimal, start at the decimal. So in our example, there is no decimal, so we have to start from the back of the 9. Okay, so here's the 9. Since there's no decimal, we start in the back of the 9. And since the power is negative, we move to the left 2 times. So 1, 2. And there's an empty space here, so we put a 0. When there's an empty space, we put a 0. So the answer is 0.09. Okay, this 0 right here is just a place value so that it can tell us that we are in decimal. Okay, so examples for scientific notations and standard notations. So again, be very careful and make sure you follow these 2 rules. Again, rule number 1, if there is a decimal, then we start at the decimal. If there is no decimal, we start at the back. Second rule says if the first number has to be from 1 to 9. First number cannot be 0. First number cannot be bigger than 9. Okay, so be very careful.